everybody, welcome to Home on the Hill. The first thing I want to say this time is just a kind of small announcement about this channel and where I'm going, what I'm doing. So this channel kind of sits beneath my personal YouTube account. And that's kind of historic, I think, because I set it up absolutely eons ago, years ago, when I think that was the way that you set a YouTube channel up, or maybe I did it wrong years ago. But anyway, I think kind of part of the reason it doesn't come up in searches and people can't find it very easily is because I haven't got it set up right. So it's not Home on the Hill in its own right, but it sits underneath my personal account. So I have got a Home on the Hill UK account, and I'm in the process of moving everything across. So what I'm actually doing is putting all the videos from last year, from 2020, onto that alternative account, and then hopefully the Beltane video, so at the start of May, that will go live both on here and on the new account. And then basically I'll be closing this one down, or not closing it down, but I'll stop uploading here and start uploading over there. So I have got a few subscribers on this channel, it's less than 50, so hopefully I can persuade most of you to subscribe on the new one, and we'll see if that helps and actually means that I get a few more subscribers. We will see. Okay, so I just wanted that to be a standalone piece of video so I could use it as a separate thing as well as part of this podcast. So this is for the Imbolc, the early February podcast. So it's actually the 10th of January today that I'm recording. I've been outside, I've been pruning an apple tree. I was outside for about an hour and I got so cold. It's really, I mean, it's not freezing, it's 1 or 2 degrees, but yeah, I was really feeling it. So I'd taken everything outside with me thinking that I was going to record this outside because the light at the moment is so poor in here. But yeah, I was just too cold, so I thought, well, I'll come in and I'll try and do it in a different space. So we're in a different space than usual. This is actually my living room, and behind the camera, you can't see, but behind the camera is an enormous south-facing window. So hopefully I'm sitting in some of the best light that there is. So I'm just looking at my notes on my phone and thinking about what I was going to talk about this month, what kind of craft projects I've been up to. And the first thing I have to show you is this. Let's hold it up to the camera. It's a notebook with a kind of applique crow on the front. So I'd actually made this before I released and before I recorded the last video, because what I do every Christmas for my husband, I try and actually make him a gift. Some of these things have been more successful than others, but this is what I made in this year. So the first thing I did was it was teach myself to do some bookbinding. So yeah, this is my first attempt at bookbinding. It's not the neatest, I'm sure proper bookbinders would look at that in horror, but you know, it works as a notebook. He uses notebooks a lot, actually. Yeah, he's always got one in his pocket. And then he really likes crows, so he's got a crow motif on his double base, and it's just a creature that he enjoys. So the sky is the sort of blues and pinks of... I actually looked out the window one morning and saw a crow sitting on a tree in the garden with a kind of blue-pink early morning sky behind it, and thought that's what I want to recreate. So this is all just made out of scraps of fabric that I had around. So I started off making the blue and the pink sky. I think you can see in there's a little bit of hand embroidery. So that fabric there was like blue with white spots on it, so I tried to make something out of the white spot and make a crescent moon. I'm not sure that bit's been terribly effective because you can't really see it. But yeah, basically I found a crow motif on the internet, made it the right size, cut it out in black fabric, and it's all just appliqued on. The back of the notebook is I put a bit of quilt batting in there to make it a bit thicker, so there's a little bit of quilting there. And the fabric, the main fabric, is a shot silk. These are all just scraps in my fabric stash. So yeah, that's my my notebook that I wanted to share with you. Other craft projects, so if you've watched this last time, you'll remember that I was working on a cardigan for me. I haven't got that to show you this time, the progress, because basically I finished the body. It's got no arms, but I finished the body of it, and it's actually blocking on the craft room floor. It's almost dry, because I thought if I block it and try it on, then I can kind of get a feel for whether it's right and whether it fits before I start on the sleeves, and then it'll all kind of sit right while I'm measuring to see if the sleeves are the right length. So that's my thinking with that. Sorry, slightly distracted. I think there's been a red kite flying over. We've never had a red kite round here before, and I think it just flew over really quite low. There was something very big up there. Now the next thing I wanted to talk about is a rather frustrating knitting project. So one of my favourite designers is Sophia Camerborn, and she does a lovely podcast, Camerbornia, which I really recommend if you're not familiar with it, having a watch of that. And I really like this pattern that she did called the, my poor Swedish now, Sagosad mittens, which I've got a motif around the bottom of some kind of brightly lit houses. And I have tried multiple times to make these mittens, but as well as doing the mittens, I decided to make a hat. Now she released the mitten pattern, and then months later she released a hat pattern, and the hat pattern that she made is a kind of beret style. But before she released that hat pattern, I decided to have a go at turning it into one myself, and so I made a beanie style hat, which is this. And you can see this, I'm wearing it in some of the video I think that I'm going to share with you, and you can see there's the house motif at the bottom. The trouble I have with this is you can see, and it's not so much on here, but when I put it on and pull it down in the video, you can see that the bit where the houses are is just much tighter than the rest. So I have real kind of tension issues that usually I knit very loosely. So if a pattern said use a 4mm needle, I would probably start swatching with a 2.75 one to see if I could get gauge, because that's how loosely I knit. But my colour work just seems much tighter. So I do kind of go up. Well, I'm trying to work out exactly how much I need to go up to get that right. So that's the hat I made, which is okay. It's not brilliant, but it's okay. And then, I had a go at making the mittens. So this is one of my attempts that I got. So you can see there it's sort of sitting on waste yarn. I did that much and then got frustrated with it, because you can see from the shape the houses are just much tighter, and when I go to put it on, there's a tightness there, you know, that there just shouldn't be to get a mitten on, and then it's much looser round the top. The trouble is I started making these and then I got frustrated and put it on waste yarn and threw it in the bag, and then when I pick it up again and thought, right, I am going to master these mittens because I really do like them. I've no idea what size needles I knitted this on. I don't know whether I did the colour work on the same size needles or a different size needle. I've no idea what I've done. So I thought, right, I'll start again and I'll make really careful notes on Ravelry, which is what I did. So here we go. I started again on 2mm needles, and I knitted the sort of bottom bit, the bit in grey. And then when I got to the colour work, I sized up to 3mm needles, and I think it's okay. It's not as tight as before, apart from just this very last row that I did. And I did that the other night. I was actually in the music room, and Keith was playing and recording and such, and I was sitting listening, and I'd had a glass of red wine, and I was probably just a bit tired, and I'd maybe had a bit too much wine, and I was a bit too relaxed with the music, and I just didn't focus enough. And this last row that I've done is much tighter than the others, so I've got to kind of unknit that and have another go. So I'm just finding this a really frustrating process, that I can't knit these bloody mittens that I really do rather like. And I was just kind of beating myself up a bit, saying, well, clearly, excuse me, I can't do colour work. Much as I like it, much as I want to do colour work, I'm not very good at it. And then I went out for a walk the other day and I put my mittens on, which I made, which are colour work. So, this is nonsense that I can't do colour work, because there's some perfectly good colour work. That's a Kate Davis pattern. Yeah, and they're not too tight, they're absolutely fine and comfy and lovely and warm. So all over colour work's fine because the tension stays the same. Yeah, the other bit I was going to share as well is, this is what I made Keith Christmas 2018, which is an all over colour work hat. So, the idea that I can't do colour work is clearly nonsense. But what I'm struggling with is matching the tension of my ordinary knitting to the tension of my colour work. So that's an ongoing project that I am determined to get right. So I'm just looking at my notes here and what else I was going to look at. I was just going to talk very quickly about spinning, because I showed you my spinning last time and some yarn that I'd spun as practice. So I'm continuing with that. I've actually got the spinning wheel now. It's set up in the living room. There's a sort of high dining chair sat next to it, so it's really easy to get it out and have a go at it. I've found some rather nice blue-faced Leicester fibre. I've no idea where it came from, but there's 100 grams of it. I thought, right, if I spin that up and ply it and everything, then 100 grams of yarn is something worth having. Might make a nice pair of fingerless mitts or a hat or something like that. So yeah, I'll actually try and get there. And I think I'm getting better. I'm getting more relaxed at it. I kind of said to myself the other day where I want to get to with my spinning. So we have booked a week's holiday in Wales in May. Whether we'll be able to go or not is obviously very COVID dependent. Yeah, but we've paid a deposit and we'll see. We're hopeful that we'll be able to go. And what I'd really like to do is feel like, yes, my spinning wheel is something that I want to take on holiday with me, because I want to sit and spin as a relaxation, whether I'm sitting outside the holiday home on this gorgeous organic small holding or sitting inside. So I've been trying, my idea was to do half an hour a day, but that's not really working because some nights I've just been too tired and gone, I'm not touching it. But yeah, as I say, I've come in from the garden now. When we're finished talking to you, I'm going to go and do a bit of painting, which is something else I've been experimenting with, but I'm not going to share that with you. And then I'm going to come back down here probably about 3 o'clock, light the fire, get toasty warm and sit and spin for a bit. So that's where I want to get to with my spinning. Yeah, the last thing I was just going to say is, God, it's cold and dreary in January, isn't it? And I was just looking back, as I say, I was transferring these videos over to the new channel and realised that the one for early February 2019, 2020 rather, actually had a picture of snowdrops as the thumbnail for it. I can't see any snowdrops yet this year. I mean, I know, obviously I've changed the way I do things and changed the timetable for these videos, so I guess I just kind of wanted to say, although it feels dark and cold in January, in a few weeks, by the time this video comes out in early February, we should be starting to see snowdrops and, early signs of spring. That's right, I was going to talk about one more thing, which is about books and reading. So what I kind of do, so since May, I've been just working 4 days a week, and I thought rather than just kind of absorbing this extra day into the weekend, I try and have a focus each. And actually I do it sort of between these Celtic festivals seasonally, because then that works kind of seasonally. So the one leading up to Beltane, which is early May for example, is a focus all about the garden and sowing seeds and so on. So I try and have a focus for each sort of chunk of time. So each one is like somewhere between 6 and 8 weeks, and the last one I always have as a kind of a day off, a me day. At the moment I've mostly been out for walks and rambles, but my original thinking was, you know, when things are more normal, I might go to a gallery, I might go to a museum, something like that. And the first one I always spend doing quite a thorough clean of the house. I'm not very good at housework, but I do try and keep on top of it that way by sort of saying every 6, 7, 8 weeks I do quite a thorough clean. And then the ones in between, so there's between 4 and 6 in between, I try and have a bit of a focus. So this time last year I think I was actually focusing. I talk too long obviously. This camera, it's great, but it's not a video camera, and so it'll actually only record about 15 minutes at a time. And obviously I've been talking for 15 minutes. But what I was saying was, this kind of focus I have for each kind of chunk of time between the Celtic festivals. So this time last year the focus would have been on seeds, and on getting seeds packed up and everything ready for the seed swaps. The first of which would normally have been the first Saturday in February, but you know, that's all cancelled this year because of COVID. It happened last year, was just before it all kicked off, and hopefully we'll be back again in 2022. But for now, so I haven't focused on seeds. What my focus is for this month is particularly about reading, and I love to read actually, but I kind of struggle to make time for it. I just feel like it's not very productive, you know, just sitting on the sofa with a book isn't really doing anything. And so I'm trying to give myself permission to just do that every Friday, not, you know, not read all day. I mean, you know, get up and do some housework and bits and pieces and fit it in around other stuff. But yeah, whenever I think, oh, what shall I do, you know, don't want to do any craft work yet, what's my focus at the moment? It's reading. And this is really handy because my husband got me a couple of great books at Christmas. So and he got me this one, so he bought this one second hand. Don't know how well you can see that there, but it's about compost toilets. And one of the projects I'm hoping to get sorted this year is to get a compost toilet in the garden. So I say compost toilet, that's a grand word for it. What I'm actually thinking of doing is putting up a shed, a ready bought shed, and then putting in it basically a bucket with a toilet seat on top, filling the bucket with sawdust and putting signs up saying do not poo in this loo, it is for wheeze only. So I guess the main user will be me when I'm working in the garden, but also when people come on courses and such here. Also, a longer term project is to have some kind of cabin in the garden which I or other people could stay in, so hopefully then that will provide some kind of basic toilet for that. But as I say, it will have signs saying, you know, if you need a number 2, go up to the house. So that book's been really interesting and useful as well. And then the other thing he bought me was this brilliant, it's a Haynes manual, shed manual, because I really want to build this shed. I say build it myself. I don't mean that I have to do all the work. I mean that I kind of have to take charge and take the decisions and decide how it's going to be, and I'm not very confident in that, but I do want to do it. So that's for this kind of longer term project. My aim with that, so I'll be 56 this summer, is that it's something that will be in use and we'll be able to have a party in on my 60th birthday. So it is like longer term. So they're the couple of books he bought me. And then another book which I bought for myself. I've read very good reviews of it. This is Mary Reynolds, the Irish garden designer, Garden Awakening. And she has a whole project. This is an arc about rewilding of gardens. So I've not looked at this yet. It's not a classic gardening book. It's not kind of full of pictures or anything. It's lots of text. But yeah, looking forward to reading that. Whether I'll get to that before Imbolc, I really don't know. So I think that's all I was going to talk about this time. I've got some video for you about pruning the orchard. Yeah, all the gardening stuff is mostly about pruning the orchard. That's what I'm doing this time of year. And I was just going to show you kind of how I organise myself. So there's about 30 trees in the orchard, and I used to try and prune them all and give myself an awful lot of stress over it, which I don't anymore. So what I've done now is narrow it down to there's only about 6 or 8 trees that get pruned every year, and I plan it. So this is my lovely Earth Pathways diary, and this is the planner part in the end, so not the diary pages but a bit more than that. And then you can actually see in there, I think it says orchard 3 and then orchard 16, so each of my trees is numbered in my head. So I've done tree 3 and I did half of tree 16 this morning when I was, and then freezing cold, so I'm a little bit behind now, but that's okay, because if we have warm sunny spring days in February I shall catch up. Yeah, so that's kind of how I do things. I just actually work out how long does it take to prune each tree, plan it in, make time for it, decide when it's going to be, and that's how I make sure that it's all done by the end of March. And I've mentioned these before, but if anybody's not aware of it, they really are lovely. I love my Earth Pathways diary. So in the actual diary pages, I just make some little bits of notes about what I've done, both in the garden and craft-wise, and the weather as well. I record the weather. And then the other pages are, there's always a nice piece of art and some writings or a poem or something. And I kind of save these up, so I don't read these until the actual week where I'm writing on it for that week. So that's how I do my garden planning anyway. Right, I'm going to shut up now, end of this video, and yeah, there's a bit more about pruning the orchard, and speak to you, yes, so this will come out for Imbolc early February, and then the next one will be mid-March, yeah, equinox, and wow, sunshine, spring, how exciting. Speak to you soon. I thought I would have a quick chat and just talk through about how I prune my apple trees. It's not so much a this is how you prune apple trees, because I don't ever feel that I'm getting it 100% right. I'm certainly no expert, and I don't know, if you look online, and I've looked online quite extensively, I never find any like really clear definitive instructions. It all seems a little bit vague, and it kind of starts off quite detailed, but then the further into it that you get, the kind of, it's like it expects the readership to have switched off by sort of a few hundred words in, and then it gets more and more vague. That's been my what I've found anyway. So I thought I'll just talk about what I do. As I say, I don't say that it's right, I don't know that it's right, but I do kind of feel that any pruning is better than no pruning. So first of all, like, why do we prune trees? And one of the big reasons, particularly with like the triploid, like the Bramley, yeah, so I've got a big Bramley and another, it's not a Bramley but it's another, so triploid trees have 3 sets of chromosomes, and this has sort of 2 main effects. One is that they don't produce any pollen that can pollinate other trees, so they produce fruit but they don't pollinate any other trees and help them produce fruit. The other thing is that they're absolutely enormous and they grow really, really vigorously. So pruning those, because if you don't prune them, they tend to go over to what's called biennial bearing, which means that they only produce fruit every other year, or perhaps even less than that. Another reason I just thought of actually worth mentioning is sometimes in apples they get what's called bitter pit. It's not a disease, it's a kind of just brown marks on the apples, and they don't taste particularly nice, but it's not that bad. But it's a calcium deficiency, and that's because the rootstock can't bring enough calcium, can't bring enough nutrients up for the amount of fruit and the amount of wood being grown on top. So that's another reason for pruning, is it sort of helps prevent bitter pit. So what I'm going to prune today is an Egremont russet tree. So it's not a triploid. Lovely russety apple, great. And what I do is I sort of view it as having 5 or 6 limbs. So I think this has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I start at the end of each one, so that's up there somewhere off camera, and just look at each kind of ending and decide whether to trim it off. And then also I will sometimes, depending how well it's been pruned other years, so I might take a big piece like that piece there, because it's too crowded. But yeah, it's not massively scientific. But what I did want to show you is this is a bit of wood that I trimmed off from the Bramley last week. And so what I'm going to do when I talk about actually pruning is talk about fruit buds and wood buds. So I thought we'll just have a close look at some of the buds. So if you can see that against my glove, that's not much paler, is it? Yeah. So those kind of big, fat, sticky out buds are fruit buds, and they'll go on to flower and produce apples. Whereas this piece that I've chopped off, most of the buds, again there's one, are much flatter and smaller, and they are wood buds, and they'll just grow on and produce wood. Now what happens, obviously I've chopped this off the tree, but this sort of long piece here, huge kind of water shoot, that's all 1 year's growth. If I chop that back to 3 or 4 wood buds, then the bottom few should transform themselves into fruit buds. So they won't fruit next year, but they will the year after. So when I come back this time next year, if I've chopped it there, I'll see a few fruit buds, and then maybe the top 1 or 2 will be wood buds, and I'll have done this again. And you just keep chopping back until ultimately you get a lot more fruit buds and a lot less of this sort of tall, lanky growth. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just look at the tree, look at all these kind of spindly shoots that you can see. You can probably see them better actually on the tree that's behind this one, and chop them back. But I have one other rule that I abide by, and that's why I've got this ladders in shot, because anything I can't reach when I'm stood on the top of these ladders, if I can't reach it, it has to go, because it's utterly pointless. And then that helps keep the fruit at a nice low level, so come the autumn I can actually pick it. So that's how I prune my apple trees, and now I'm actually going to get on with it.